Lees-Galloway.
Mr. Chairman, I think the comments from the previous two contributors to the debate raise the issue of casual work and the casualisation of the workforce. And look, I agree with a comment the Minister made some time ago that casual agreements do have a place in the overall framework. In fact, what we had when employers came to submit on this legislation, many of the employers, perhaps after a little bit of questioning from the Labor Party, agreed that if they've got permanent agreements, casual agreements and fixed-term agreements, and there was no need for zero-hour contracts. And it's great, we're not going to have zero-hour contracts, but we are going to have permanent agreements, casual agreements and fixed-term. Only one of those is defined in our legislation. And this is actually a debate. This is a live debate about whether it would be a good thing or a bad thing to define casual and permanent agreements in the legislation, and perhaps tag to those casual agreements some casual loading of the type that Clayton Mitchell is proposing with his SOP. And so I don't want to necessarily express a firm view one way or the other on that, except to say that it is a live debate. But I do see some merit in defining casual agreement. And I think that by defining casual agreements, we would deal with a lot of the issues that Clayton Mitchell is trying to do by including the loading. Because one thing that the loading does, or at least that's one thing that is the intention of including the loading, is to be a disincentive, not to be an incentive to put employees on a casual agreement, but actually to be a disincentive to employers to put people on casual agreements, or at least to make them stop and think about whether it's in their best interests to have people on casual, or whether they would be better off to have them on a permanent part-time agreement with guaranteed hours. This question of loading, obviously there are other aspects to the loading as well, which Clayton Mitchell has raised in terms of equity, just what casual employees are entitled to, and we already have that 8% loading recognising annual leave. But I think there's a lot more to it, and that may very well be one of the next things this House needs to think about. Permanent agreements being for permanent work. So where work is permanently available, that should not be provided through a casual agreement. I also think that there's a lack of understanding amongst many employers about what the appropriate use of casual agreements is. And although we have case law, and although we have a degree of advice from Moby, we don't have them in law, and that makes it very difficult for many employers to actually use them properly. So, look, we're going to support the New Zealand First proposal. I suspect it's not going to get up tonight, but this is an issue we have to come back to, and I'm very keen for members from around the House to address some of these broader issues around casualisation and how we make sure that the range of employment agreements that we have available to us are being used properly. I just want to make one last comment, since we're ranging over all the remaining parts, which includes the title. The title of this legislation is the Employment Standards Legislation Bill. That seems a very bland title for a bill that extends paid parental leave, eliminates zero-hour contracts after we're finished here tonight, and improves employment standards. And of course, that's actually because this started off only dealing with employment standards. After the Labor Party and Sue Moroney and 26 for Babies campaign ran that wonderful campaign, the government realised they had to act on paid parental leave. And after the Unite Union and the CTU and the Labor Party and other opposition parties ran our campaigns around zero-hour contracts, the government realised they had to act on that too. And they threw those two issues into this legislation. Hence the Employment Standards Legislation Bill deals with those. You know what, sir? We're happy. We're going to be celebrating after tonight. We have made huge advances tonight. We've also identified the next tranche of work that this House needs to consider in employment relations, and I hope that the cordial approach that we have built around employment relations might continue, and we might actually start to reverse some of the damage that's been done in recent years and make some real progress.